you want somebody to do something, or you don't want somebody to do something, then how about you step up and do it yourself? You're not doing the things that I would be doing for you. You're not considering me in the same way as I'll be considering you. And once you realize that, that's when you need to take a step back and allow them to deal with it however they're going to be dealing with it. But it's really not on you. If they don't want to be your friend no more, they don't want to talk to you no more, they don't want to date you no more, then it's not on you, baby. You will be okay. Hey y'all, it's Megan May, and this is Transparency, where we keep it real about our growing pains and all the beautiful moving parts of life that may not be the most glamorous but shape us into who we are today. So if you're ready for some introspection and evolution, go ahead and lock in by hitting the subscribe button. And if whatever I says resonates with you, you can go ahead and drop a comment, smash that like button so I know we see each other. So a quick disclaimer, I do feel a little congested, so if I do sound a little different or weird, just forgive me. I'm sorry. I might have to just take me some Sudafed or something, honey, to get right, but I don't even know where this came from, so just forgive me if I do sound crazy, but I'm sure you can still understand all the points that's gonna be made, so still lock in today. Hopefully it's not too annoying or too overwhelming for you to still concentrate on what's being delivered today. So to get into the episode for today, I would like to talk about people pleasing, because I am a retired people pleaser, and I keep saying that because I'm on my way to retirement. I think I still have certain people pleasing tendencies, and it's not healthy. It's not something that I'm proud of, but I just feel like this is how I've always been, and for me it stemmed from childhood. So your people pleasing tendencies can stem from anything. It can stem from childhood. It can stem from a job that you once had, or a relationship that you were once in, a friendship that you once had or may still have. But for me, it stemmed from childhood. I think I just wanted to always receive some form of validation for doing really well in school. I wasn't a problem child, but I did sometimes get in trouble for this mouth. And honestly, not too much has changed, because I never recognized me saying what I needed to say or speaking my mind as a form of disrespect. I do understand that there's ways that you can deliver something to somebody that is more respectful than sometimes just bluntly saying how you feel. But at the time, like, it was more important for me to just say what needed to be said. And as a people pleaser, I think this is an important technique, or not necessarily technique, but practice to put into play when you are starting to enforce those boundaries and set higher standards for yourself, and say, like, this is just not something that I'm willing to put up with anymore. These are not the extremes that I'm willing to go to anymore to satisfy this next person. It's important for you to say, like, what you need to say without one, shying away from the actual problem, but also without being very aggressive in your delivery or lacking any empathy in your delivery. So that's what we'll be talking about today, just why we are people pleasers and how to stop being a people pleaser. And essentially, being a people pleaser is really just shrinking yourself and making yourself smaller. And people do this for a variety of reasons, but we'll get into some of the reasons in a minute. But if you are a people pleaser, then buckle in for this talk, because I feel like I'll probably say some things that may seem a bit triggering, and it's not because I'm really trying to talk at you. As I said, I'm exiting my people pleaser era. I like to think that I'm already there, but I notice that sometimes I still fall victim of being a people pleaser, and it just depends on the relationship. I speak my mind, and I'm very assertive with my boundaries when it comes to people who have no real close emotional connection to me, because it's easier. But people that I don't really want to let down, whose feelings I often take into consideration, it's a lot harder for me to enforce boundaries and for me to say what needs to be said to protect myself. But what you have to realize is, in choosing to cater to somebody else's feelings and thinking like, oh, you don't want to step on any toes, it's ultimately going to cause you to compromise on what truly satisfies yourself and what makes you happy. So you have to be willing to decide them versus me. And I hate to make it sound like it has to be a competition, because it's not really a competition, but you are choosing. You have to learn that in saying no to someone else, you are saying yes to yourself oftentimes, and vice versa. By saying yes to somebody else, you're often telling yourself no. And in a lot of instances, when you're telling yourself no, you're not even being fair to yourself. And you also need to consider that if roles were reversed, a lot of the times where you break your back to please somebody else or to show up for somebody else, they oftentimes, given the same circumstances that you may be in, would not have chosen you. So, hard pill to swallow, but we're gonna talk about some real things today. So, as I said, for me, being a people pleaser stemmed from childhood. I wanted to make good grades, and I didn't want to get in trouble because I knew it would make my parents very happy. And realistically, I think the only parent that would really be at my throat and at my neck about things was my mom. Now, my dad definitely cares about our academics. He always cared about our academics, and he just cares about us doing well for ourselves. But I don't think he really had much of a problem with me saying I didn't want to do something or speaking up for myself as much as my mom did. I think for my mom, she felt like I would be challenging her if I said something opposed to what she was directing me to do or saying that I should consider doing. She would sometimes feel offended, and for me, it kind of made me shrink myself and think, okay, well, I don't want to disappoint her. I don't want her to feel like I'm challenging her. I don't want to cause any friction, so I'll just do what she says. And as I grew older, I realized that this was a practice that I was taking into my job at times, my friendships at times, just pretty much thinking, okay, how can I prevent that other person from feeling a certain type of way? Not even necessarily towards me or about me, but feeling a certain type of way about the choices that I'm making and how it would impact them. So if what I was doing was in favor more so of myself, but not really in favor of that next person, I would oftentimes switch what I was considering doing to be more favorable for the other person. And oftentimes I would find myself complaining, or I would find myself really drained, really upset, angry. And realistically, that's the only outcome that comes from being a people pleaser, because you stretch yourself so much and you don't realize exactly how much you're stretching yourself until you feel burnt out, until you start having resentment sometimes. And if it gets to that extreme, then ultimately you may lose whatever ties you were trying to keep strong or whatever relationship you were trying to keep strong, because you're just not going to show up the same once you're burnt out. And while you can possibly explain to somebody like, hey, this is what's been going on, I feel like I've overextended myself, I was overcompensating for certain areas in my life or certain areas within our relationship and just doing too much. Some people may be understanding of that, and they'll actually empathize with you and tell you like, hey, it's okay to tell me no. It's okay if you don't feel up to it. You don't have to do it. It's okay. Like, people will give you, I guess, that reassurance and that validation that it's okay. But you shouldn't wait for people to give you that validation or that reassurance. You need to know that it's okay within yourself to disappoint other people if it means not disappointing yourself. I've had instances growing up where I would say yes to every invitation. I would try to think of how I would want to feel in certain situations and overextend myself so that that person could feel what I thought they would need to feel. But in reality, when it came time for the shoe to be on the other foot, they weren't looking out for me in those same ways. And in being a people pleaser, I think it's often overlooked that sometimes we are doing things because we do want that recognition. We want to be seen as the best girlfriend, the best boyfriend, the best friend, the best sister, the best cousin, the best whoever. And we overextend ourselves and overcompensate for things that we feel like we may be lacking. And how that end up hurting us is that when people don't give you the recognition that you possibly were seeking in overextending yourself, you start to beat yourself up and you start to feel like, oh, they're so ungrateful, and just go down this rabbit hole of feeling pretty much sorry for yourself and not really liking who you are and having some type of, I won't say resentment necessarily, but some type of hard feeling towards that person that you feel like didn't receive what you were doing in the way that you wanted them to receive it. But you have to realize that they didn't ask you to do that. And even if they did ask you to do that, you have the choice to say no. If it's not serving you, if it's not something that's coming genuinely from your heart, then say no at all times. My dad told us growing up, and he still reinforces this to us, that in times where we are asked to borrow some money, so somebody comes to us and asks if they can hold some, if we can't afford to go without getting our money back, say no. And you can apply this to any part of your life, because realistically, if you can't afford to lose that time without feeling like you've lost that time, then perhaps you shouldn't be going that extra mile for that person. And not because it might be what's best for that other person doesn't mean that you should compromise on what you want within yourself to satisfy that other person. You have to really think about what is it that you're losing and can you do without that. Because oftentimes when we don't say no to people, we are losing or missing out on something for ourselves. It could be something as simple as rest. Do you know how many invitations that I've learned to turn down? And it's not because I'm doing anything, I have any extravagant plans or anything of that nature. It's simply because I personally do not feel like it. I might have been going out repeatedly for the past 3 weekends, and this final weekend I just really want to be by myself. I really just want to unwind, move at my own pace, and that's fine. And with saying no, it's also important to learn that you do not have to explain why you're saying no. Now, there will be times where people will ask you why, and if you feel like providing that why, then okay, go ahead. But you could oftentimes just respond to that why with saying, because I just don't feel like it. And that is a good enough reason. You are not obligated to do the things that people want of you or are asking of you. Now, it's different if you have children. I don't have children, so this is my stance. Because realistically, there's nothing else that I owe anybody. And Beyonce said this in her film, and it hit me so hard, because she was saying how pretty much like she's in a stage in her career and in her life now where she doesn't feel like she has to do anything that's not really of her own will and of her own self, because she doesn't owe anything to anybody. She's not trying to prove anything to anybody. And part of being a people pleaser is thinking that you do owe things to people. Or maybe you don't feel like you owe it, but you just want that to be reciprocated to you, and you feel like this is the way of having that reciprocation. But that's not always the case. A lot of people are takers, and they'll take without reciprocating that same energy and that same grace that you show them. So you can't think in the sense of, oh, I'm doing this because I want it returned to me, because it won't always be returned. But are you going to be depleted of whatever resources or whatever love or whatever energy that you are showing these people? Are you going to feel depleted if you aren't shown that same love and energy and reciprocation? Like, really sit with yourself and ask yourself these questions, guys, because if you go too far along the path of being a people pleaser, it's harder for you to start enforcing these boundaries, and it's harder for you to start considering yourself and your own needs first, because it's going to feel too foreign. It's going to feel like you're obligated to do the things that you've been doing, because people are now going to be expecting these things of you. And you shouldn't care about people feeling like you're obligated to do something if you aren't truly obligated to do it. Because if you decide that you're not going to do it anymore, then they either have to do it for themselves or find somebody else to do it. But I think what keeps people in this space of people pleasing is that you don't want to feel replaceable. You don't want to lose that person that perhaps you've been going the extra mile to please. But realistically, if it's somebody that values you, that respects you, they'll respect the boundaries that you start to enforce. They won't see it as, oh, this has never been a thing. How all of a sudden you're starting to think this and you want this to be reciprocated, or you want to stop doing this. They won't think of things like that. They'll more so think of it like, okay, I see you respect yourself enough to enforce this boundary, and I see that I've been taken from you, and you just need somebody to help you replenish. And even if they can't help you replenish the energy or the time lost, I mean, you can't really replenish time lost, but the energy lost that you've been feeding into them or feeding into others and not really feeding into yourself as much as you should, even if they can't do that, they can step away and allow you to be able to find the ways in which you can cater to yourself. That's very important. Because again, we'll always be saying this, because this is the repeating theme of my life right now, is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And we hear that all the time, but I don't think it really hits you until you really reach E, until you're really empty and you feel like you have nothing else to give. I'll say this, exiting my last relationship helped me to realize that a power that I had was the fact that I spoke up for myself, because he was trying to tell me so many things about myself, and not in a constructive criticism type of way where he's giving me like critiques on how, you know, maybe you shouldn't do this in your next relationship. No, he was pretty much trying to tear me down by trying to create a false identity of me and push it onto me. And I don't think I ever really would have been receptive to what he was saying, because even growing up, I faced so many adults, y'all, and we'll talk about this when I talk about my childhood trauma. But I had so many adults trying to tell me like I wasn't this and I should be that, and compare me to other children that I was around. And for me, it just never really stuck with me in terms of changing my identity to fit the molding that they wanted me to fit into. Because for me, I just felt like I was who I was. And that's something that I can apply myself on, because, you know, I think if you respect certain levels of authority, or if you respect certain positions that people hold in your life, you will become content with the things that they do and the things that they say and the things that they offer you, if any, and think like this is what you deserve and this is exactly who you are. And part of being a people pleaser is not speaking up for yourself. So when he was trying to push these things onto me, I was reaffirming who I am and my own identity, who I know myself to be, but also able to speak against those things to him. And it got to a point where it became so ridiculous. Like, the things he was saying was so ridiculous, where it was just like, I don't even feel the need to respond to you, because clearly you're trying to get under my skin. And in a way, I felt like responding was giving him the satisfaction that he was making some type of point. But you're not making any type of point. What you're saying is completely invalid, and I just don't care to prove you wrong. But the power that it gave me was the fact that I was able to move stronger in that identity of who I was. And when you are a people pleaser, it's important to start assessing the things about yourself that you are so sure about. Because once you become sure of yourself, you'll realize that it's no need to try to please these people. The people that are meant to be around you and in your circle, part of your community, a part of your village, are going to naturally gravitate to you. You won't have to break your back. You won't have to put on any facades. You won't have to go the extra mile and not have it reciprocated, because they are going to love you for the person that you are authentically. You won't have to do all these things and compromise anything about yourself so that other people would want to be around you, because realistically, they're just draining you of all the beautiful things that make you who you are. So I say that to say, as you're exiting your people pleaser era, start to really hone in on the things about yourself that you truly love, and identify what is it about going that extra mile and satisfying others. What it is about those things that really you are seeking. Because if it's validation, then you can start affirming yourself. Doing affirmations is such a powerful tool. And when I first heard of it, I'm like, you just saying this stuff to yourself, but if you don't believe it, then it's not going to change anything. But realistically, you have to step away from the whole idea of trying to show up as a certain person. If you don't necessarily see yourself as beautiful, then okay, why don't you see yourself as beautiful? And once you start getting down to the nitty-gritty in those areas about, okay, why is it that this is the case and this is the case, then you can start beginning to affirm yourself by saying, I don't think that I'm beautiful because, I'm trying to think of an example. I'll use weight, because for me, my weight gain has eaten away at my confidence in a bit, and not because I feel like I'm not beautiful anymore. I definitely still find myself beautiful, but it's the fact that I don't feel comfortable in a lot of my clothes, and I'm continuously buying new things because I want to feel comfortable in my clothing, but I'm continuously gaining weight. And not to get too far off topic, but I learned to affirm myself in my beauty by saying, okay, despite the fact that I don't like how my stomach is bulging over in these pants, or my stomach is sitting in this dress, like I don't feel snatched and I don't feel the type of curvy that I once was, saying like, okay, at least I have some type of figure. I'm happy that I have a figure, and I love myself enough to know that this is not the figure that is the ideal figure for me or the most comfortable figure for me. So I love myself enough to apply myself in the areas that I once wasn't putting too much attention or care into, any nurture into, to make the change that I want to see. I hope that makes sense. We'll do a completely different episode on that. But if you get what I'm saying, it's pretty much starting to chip away the things that you would seek that external validation for. Chip away at those things and start finding, why is it that you need validation and how can you validate yourself? So that's another thing that I feel like helps you to exit your people pleaser era, is stop seeking that validation and really just pour into yourself. Find out what is it that you are seeking in going that extra mile and doing all these things for other people, and how is it that you can apply those things to yourself. Do you go the extra mile for yourself? I mean, really, I had to be honest with myself, because I realized that it was so many times where I didn't feel like going out, I didn't feel like doing anything, and I would still go because I already told them that I was coming. And for me, it felt kind of weird to tell people like, oh, I can't come, and I have no valid reasons besides I don't feel like it. When I made the plan, I probably was excited, or I probably felt like, oh, I was gonna be in this mood, but it wasn't the case. And sometimes it's not even that I'm in a bad mood. It could be simple as my hair not done, and perhaps like in my head I knew what I wanted to wear, and I just knew that I was gonna be super cute, and my hair not done. Yes, I knew I was going somewhere, but for whatever reason my hair is not done, and now I don't want to go. And I would sometimes still force myself to go because I've already made the commitment to go, not realizing that I literally don't even do that same thing for myself. Like, for example, if you tell yourself I'm sorry, I'm doing a whole bunch of stuttering, but how I said this morning, I woke up and I didn't feel like doing nothing. I didn't feel like recording. I didn't feel like doing any of my errands. I didn't feel like doing anything that I planned for the day. But had I sat in bed, spent time watching TV, scrolling on my phone, surfing the internet, doing whatever, and not committed to doing this video or doing anything else that I actually planned last night to do today, then I would have been letting myself down. No, in the moment I probably wouldn't see it as such, but that's essentially what I would be doing. So I had to pretty much compare, okay, when I tell myself that I'm gonna do something and I don't do it, how is that any different from saying that I was going to go out or saying that I was going to do something with somebody else and not feeling like doing it, but still pushing myself to do it? How is it that I'm giving this person so much power over my decisions, but I don't hold that same power within myself to make the best decisions for myself? You see what I'm saying? You have to really start to think about things in that sense, and then you'll realize that you really be putting people on a pedestal and doing too much for other people. I mean, they might be disappointed, but what is disappointing them when you would ultimately be disappointing yourself? And that's not to say show up for those that show up for you, because if people are genuinely showing up for you, then of course you should be showing up for them. But this is more so in the cases where you are doing things for people that don't do things for you. Think about it. What exactly are you losing by cutting out those people that are takers? What exactly are you losing by no longer saying yes to every invitation and every extension of, can you do this and can you do that? You're not losing anything. You're actually gaining more time, more energy, more freedom to do whatever it is that you actually want to do. So, what's stopping you? What's stopping y'all? Like, I just want to know. So, aside from just going an extra mile and extending ourselves in ways that don't necessarily get reciprocated to us, I think, like I said in the beginning, that a large part of being a people pleaser is shrinking yourself to make other people comfortable. And I see this a lot in the workplace. I think in the workplace, a lot of people are scared of challenging authority. And I feel like you should just not see it as challenging them. There's been several instances where I would have a coworker. It wouldn't necessarily be me. I think I do very well in saying exactly what needs to be said. Sometimes I might do it, I might not do it in the thick of the moment. I feel like the way that you deliver certain information, especially if you're going against what's being delivered to the vast majority, you should just pull that person to the side and do it discreetly, because people don't like embarrassment. And in a workplace, I think you get intimidated often because you feel like there may be certain repercussions or pushback that you receive for pretty much telling the person that's in charge that they're wrong. And it shouldn't be like that, but we know that workplace is politics, so that's just how it is. And I don't want you to shrink yourself and to conform to whatever ideals are being pushed upon you or pushed upon you and your peers, your colleagues, just because you don't want to challenge that other person. Listen, life is all about challenges. You're not going to know everything. Your way is not always going to be the best way. So if somebody isn't open to you saying what is and telling them that what they're saying is not what it is, then that's their problem that they'll have to take up with themselves at their own time. That has nothing to do with you. But if you know what it is, then you need to say what it is. I remember my pastor growing up, he used to say, when you know what you know, that you know what you know, then you know what you know. And I mean, at the time, I'm just like, this doesn't make sense. But it makes so much sense. When you know what you know, you know what you know. So it doesn't matter if they're sitting here saying things with so much authority and it's wrong. If it's wrong, then it's wrong. You know what you know, speak up. Why are you shrinking yourself to make them feel more comfortable and to make them feel like they're just the most dominant in the situation? I mean, it's not a power fight. You're just saying that they're wrong, and they can be wrong because they are human. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong. Why do people always want to be right? Like, I really just don't get that. I really don't get that. A lot of arguments, a lot of friction, confrontations, they're caused because people just be wanting to be right. And it's just like, for what? Okay, you right, now what? Like, get over yourselves. So that's one thing that I wanted to say is, when you know what you know, speak up. Don't be that person that's shying away from saying exactly what needs to be said that everybody else is thinking because you don't want to challenge the person that's speaking. If they're wrong, then they're wrong. And there's nothing wrong with you saying that they're wrong, because if they're wrong, then they're wrong. But yes, guys, I feel like that's definitely the answer. I said all that and it done got me to a conclusion, because this wasn't even in my notes, but the answer to fixing our people-pleasing tendencies is to working on our confidence. Because once you work on your confidence, it's just nothing that you would be seeking. You would not be doing all this extra stuff, because for what? You would realize that you're not gaining anything. Because if the reason that you're a people pleaser is to seek external validation, you would be giving yourself that validation. You would be standing firm in who you are. You would know exactly who you are, what it is that you want, and you would be providing those things for yourself. And you will also only gravitate or only entertain those people that are doing those things naturally for you, because they see that you're doing it for them. They'll be pouring into you as you're pouring into them. And those people that are not doing those things just shouldn't have access to you. I mean, for what? How would you be winning in life if all you were doing was pouring into somebody else and nobody was replenishing you? Let's not be losers. Let's not be losers. Okay? So, I say all this to say that you should definitely put yourself first and stop being a people pleaser. Work on your confidence. Love yourself enough to say no. And know when to walk away. Know when to cut ties and let people go. But I send you off with love. I send you off with grace. Because this is definitely something that you're going to have to practice, being graceful with yourself. I send you off with love. I send you off with grace. I wish you the best. Of course, if you have anything to add to this conversation, leave it in the comments below. And I might delve deeper into this topic, because I just feel so passionate about it. Because I really just didn't realize how much of a detriment I was being to myself by having all these leeches around me. But yes, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Toodles.